Hey everybody, I'm Eugene Mulero with Transport Topics, and with me is Jen Scholtes, transportation reporter with Politico Pro, and we're going to be talking about the highway bill that Congress is putting together. And Jen, this week it looks like the House might take up a short-term extension. There was a notice from the House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy saying a vote on a short-term extension of the Highway Trust Fund is likely. That would, if Congress does approve that, that would be the 36th such short-term extension since 2009. And your team at Politico is reporting that this is going to be very likely to happen, this short-term measure.
Yeah, we were hearing over the weekend, they put that little notice on the agenda on Friday night, and so we were hearing over the weekend that it was just put on there just in case. But it seems like now that they are going to pass it just in case, so that they have that in their back pocket, so that if they don't get done by Friday, which a lot of aides are saying is unrealistic to finish this by Friday, that then they can whip out that short-term extension. It becomes easier to accomplish that because we aren't down to a really scary level in the Highway Trust Fund just yet, not as low as we have been approaching some other deadlines for policy patch. So now we can just extend it for a few more weeks if that is what the consensus.
Because the trust fund's authority expires Friday.
Right.
And then what your team is reporting, and this is an exclusive, that a short-term patch for funding authority for the trust fund would looks like it will go through December 4th. To give the transportation authorizers who are conferencing this week to put together the final bill, to give them through the Thanksgiving break to continue work on that final bill. And what I heard from Inhofe's people and Bill Schuster's people, the leaders in transportation and the Senate, is that they're still, even notwithstanding this short-term patch looming, they still want to get something done by Thanksgiving. Is that what you're hearing?
Yeah, but they always want to get something done this week, next month. We've kicked the can to the point where you want to get it done just short of where you've kicked the can. But we've seen this. I can't even count up the amount of times that we've seen this just this year where they've set goals and fallen short. But it does seem like they are getting close, that there's a lot of behind the scenes conference negotiations going on, and that the formal conference, which we expect tomorrow, Tuesday, will be more for formality, and that people are discussing their qualms behind the scenes. And as we discussed a little bit earlier, you see some of the major issues coming out in press releases, mostly driven by people off the Hill, but sometimes it behooves the lawmaker to keep their concerns close to the vest, work those out behind the scenes so that they don't raise red flags to the people who are opposing those. So there are things that could change in the bill that none of us have heard of, because the people who want them changed are smart enough to know that sometimes you keep your mouth shut, and then you work it, and then it gets passed, and then maybe somebody finds out right before it passes, or sometimes right after it goes to the president.
Totally.
So there, I would advise anybody who's looking to make sure that their provisions that they wanted or didn't want, comb through that bill once it's done, because we don't know exactly what they've been working on behind the scenes.
Exactly. And one of the concerns that a few senators raised was, an authorization of the use of twin 33-foot trailers nationwide, even though that's not in play in these policy bills. That is a provision that is in the transportation funding bills for fiscal 2016. So it's a non-binding provision. So it's being asked for consideration among the authorizers. But what are you hearing from on other concerns from transportation groups?
Yeah, all the trucking issues have been the main focus of these letters, that both people, a bunch of senators wrote a letter to Senate leaders and to conferees, and then I think 200 safety groups
Yeah.
have come out and want things changed, and the majority of those are trucking related. The one that's easiest kind of, I guess, to explain is the trucker age. It's kind of like a hot talking point to be able to say that teenagers are going to be able to drive big rigs. So that kind of gets mentioned the most just because it's the easiest to explain, but definitely truck size, truck weight, these are things that people are watching to see, does this make it, does it, what will change there? And then also some recall authority for the department to be able to insist on recalls of rental cars and things like that. So you saw a letter yesterday from Secretary Fox where he pointed some of those things out and said, these are the things that I want in. And it's really interesting to see people come forward as it seems like this process is kind of firming up, still saying this is what I want. So it almost indicates to me that if the Secretary of Transportation is still laying out exactly what he wants in this bill, that he knows that it's not completely cooked yet. So, So that's.
And Friday, when we have 13 Senate Democrats, Feinstein among them, Leahy among them, saying that their support for this bill will diminish if these rollback provisions are included. This is the week before conferencing, so it does put perspective that things are still in play, things are still in motion, which, going back to what Chairman Inhofe of the Transportation Committee in the Senate, what he said, that a conference negotiation will take a few hours, and he did say that on the floor, it would take a few hours.
Yeah.
I was taken aback. I'm like, a few hours for a conference, negotiations on this massive bill didn't seem like it would be a likely thing.
Yeah, he's always very hopeful, wishful thinker, but I think he was talking, like we said, about the formal actual conference meeting, whereas as we know, these things are definitely being discussed, and there are negotiations going on as we speak, and you see that, like you said, in the letter that we saw Friday. People are trying to put out little threats saying this could diminish support if you don't do what I want you to do on safety stuff, but they're not bold enough to say, I'm not going to vote for this bill. If so it doesn't. Nobody's saying exactly who won't vote for the bill, but it's like a threat. If you don't figure this stuff out, then we're going to jump off board.
The bill itself, they're looking at. We've been talking about 6-year bills from both the House and Senate that would have enough funding through a series of mechanisms and shifting money from various programs. That will provide 3 years of funding, but also in play from the House side is a proposal that was led by Congressman Neugebauer of Texas that would boost funding for 5 years. Notwithstanding that, what we've seen recently is the leading transportation groups were calling for a different type of bill. Could you talk about what they were looking at?
So I think it's kind of the trade-off. People on Capitol Hill obviously want to provide funding for as many years as possible so they can couple that with authority and don't have to think about it for 3 more, 5 more, 6 more years, whatever they can accomplish. But now people off of the Hill have gotten the idea, well, if you came up with enough money for 5 years, it would really be awesome for us if you could just take that 5-year money and condense it into maybe 3 years, then we'd get more money for our programs.
Exactly.
And we won't have to fight over, taking this grant program money and putting it here. And I think that's very attractive to people off the Hill, but I haven't heard a lot of talk on the Hill. But it is an interesting notion, and it's one that has kind of come out of nowhere, where for years, and especially now just weekly and daily, this year, you've been hearing people say, we want certainty, we want a multi-year bill, the longest you can do.
Yeah.
And now they're a little bit changing their strategy and saying, oh no, we want the most money per year, even if that means fewer years. So it's an interesting strategy.
And that's the first time I saw that type of language from these leading transportation groups. So, in going back to the timeline, let's say there is a short-term extension and you move this to December 4th, the Highways Trust Fund Authority going through December 4th. What happens if they don't get it done by December 4th? Don't we now include transportation at this massive end of the year legislative agenda before Congress?
Yeah, and we have seen so often the transportation deadlines meet up with the funding deadlines, right? Like we saw that in September, where you were like the fiscal year is coming to head. You've got this FAA stuff going on. You've got Transportation Authority expiring, and I think we have seen that it's a pretty easy lift as long as you don't need to come up with that money. So I think people are going to be keeping their eye on the trust fund, and we thought it was going to run out previously, but it looks now like people don't do that much construction work in the winter, and that we're going to be able to limp along with the low balance that we have for quite a while.
Exactly.
So usually when the lawmakers are especially looking to go away for the holidays, and they've got other things going on, you can call this consensus to sign off on another short term. So obviously that's not something that they would concede as they're about to pass this 2-week patch to get them to December 4th, if that's what they end up clearing for the president. But it certainly wouldn't surprise anybody if they did another patch beyond that even.
Yeah.
And 2016 is scary for people. People don't want to get into the presidential election year, but if you say, we're going to get this, maybe they go from December 4th right up to to their winter break or something. I don't know what they'll decide to do, but these short-term patches seem to be very, very short. We got 22 days out of this last one, and they weren't even in session most of those days. So
so not only are we hearing they want to get a multi-year bill by Thanksgiving, but I'm hearing from almost everybody that they definitely want to get anything highway policy related before the 2016 calendar year. Jen, we're going to be very interested in Politico Pro's coverage of the transportation negotiations this week, and they can go to political.com for all the latest on transportation, and check out ttnews.com and Capitol Agenda for updates and information about the Capitol Hill freight news. Thank you.